Put up your hand if you've ever avoided having a difficult conversation. I know I have. You know what it's like. It's so easy to brush the little things under the carpet when they're tiny specks of dust. But then those specks of dust turn into dust mite mounds. Next thing you know, they seep out from under the carpet, take over your whole entire house, and next thing, you're in hospital and can't breathe without an oxygen tank. And then you think to yourself, if only I'd dealt with that little dust or that issue when it was such a small thing, even though, and you could barely see it, but you really knew it was there. Let me tell you about a difficult conversation I recently had to have. You see, I've got 3 teenagers, aged 11, 14, and 16. Not the easiest ages. I'm sure some of you can relate in the audience. And my dad loves them more than anything. They're the center of his world. But the problem is, sometimes he has an issue with communicating that love and behaving in a way that shows how he feels about them. Now, he's not an easy man, I know. I grew up with him. He's always been strict and has stubborn ideas about the way things should be done. I mean, you can't blame him. He's an accountant after all. Recently in the school holidays, he took my 11-year-old son to play mini golf. And this should have been such a fun and bonding activity. But at the end of the day, my son said to me he never wanted to play mini golf with his grandfather ever again. And the reason? Well, the whole day my dad was telling him that he wasn't standing properly, he wasn't hitting the ball properly, and that he just wasn't doing it right. And instead of having a beautiful, fun day, my son came home feeling criticized and stressed. Now, the easy way to deal with this situation would have been to just tell my kids to suck it up. I mean, just explain. He's from a different generation, and there's a reason for the way he does these things. But by doing that, I knew I'd be robbing both my children and my dad of having a fun and enjoyable relationship, and they both deserve that. So I took the harder road and decided to confront him with the situation. I invited him over and we went for a little walk, and I told him about how the kids were feeling. And I asked how he was feeling about the situation. Now, this resulted in an honest and difficult conversation. And although he was a little bit defensive initially, he did take what I had to say on board. And he consciously started changing his behavior. And since then, their relationship is slowly but surely improving. Now, this is a personal situation, but difficult conversations come up all the time at work. And so many leaders and managers and colleagues just avoid having these conversations. In my over 2 decades of employing people, I've had to have difficult conversations time and time again. Whether it's my employees behaving inappropriately by pulling out their phone and checking their messages in the middle of a meeting, or even having their phone present in that meeting at all. I had a senior leader who spent the first hour every day on her socials, which wasn't really setting a great example for everyone else. I've had team members come to work dressed perfectly if they were going to a nightclub. And I've had people being impatient with new members of the team. And I was not going to brush these things under the carpet. But growing up with such a strong-minded father and a very opinionated family, my default when it came to difficult conversations was to avoid them. But after a while, I could see that this was having a really negative impact on both my life and my business. And this is the reason I created the Real Conversation Framework. It was really to help myself, but now I've shared it with thousands of people just like you, and it's helping other people too. So let me take you through it. R stands for reality. What is the current reality of the situation? You express what the reality is for you, and you ask the person you're talking to what is their current reality of this situation. E is for expectation. What is the expectation that you want to happen as a result of this conversation? A is for action. What action needs to be taken in order for this expectation to be met? And most importantly, you've got L. Now, L stands for listening, and this is vital. It's now time to listen to the person you're having this conversation with and get them to tell you how they feel about everything that has been discussed so far. And based on what they tell you, you can tweak that action that you came up with and make a compromise if needs be. Because if you don't get their buy-in, you might as well have swept that issue under the carpet and not dealt with it at all. Now, a lot of people get afraid when they think about confrontation and having difficult conversations. And that's why I suggest you reframe that as well. So what I like to say is reframe confrontation into you and you and you, actually taking control of the situation and moving forward with confidence. That's the way it is.